Hello, I'm Michael Chigani, and this is Straight Talk. With me today is Eve Lui. Now, Eve, you are the external vice president of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Now, Eve, the reason I asked you here is you're a student union leader, and I know that next week there will be a class boycott, right? The universities are going to have a class boycott, and even the secondary school students are going to have a class boycott because of this anti-extradition issue, right? Tell me, Eve, how long is this boycott going to last?
I think at least for 2 weeks, the class boycott campaign, but the actual duration actually depends on the response of the government, because actually by the 13th of September, if the government's not really responds to the 5 demands and then just turn a blind eye to all our campaign, and then we may escalate our action. Yeah.
So you're asking the chief executive to meet your 5 demands. Those demands, if I remember correctly, withdraw the bill, to classify what happened earlier as not a riot, an amnesty for all those arrested, bring back political reforms, and for her to resign, right? Now, you know she's not going to meet those demands, right? You and I both know that. So you're going to escalate your action to what level? How are you going to escalate it?
Actually, we do not have a very concrete answer, because we are not the leaders of the movements, and we are not the so-called leader for the class boycott.
There are no leaders for this.
We are not class boycott campaigns leader as well. So we are going to listen to the voices of students and see how they would like to continue the class boycott campaign and how they would like to escalate our action. But I think some direction would be like some open-ended general strike.
You mean strike at the schools?
Yeah, strike at school, and as well as...
Nothing violent, I hope. Radical action. But tell me this, Eve. You know, I know you're 20 years old. You're in year 2 in university. And having a class boycott, surely that hurts you more than it hurts Carrie Lam, because you're losing out on an education. It doesn't hurt her much. I mean, if you have a boycott of classes, you don't learn, you don't study, it doesn't hurt her, it hurts you.
But I would say, actually, we are not abandoning education or study. For our student unions, we will organizing different lectures as well as events in the whole class boycott campaign to ensure that the principle of boycotting class but not study have been put into practice. Yeah.
So you're not going to sacrifice your education?
I'm not going to do so. Yeah.
Okay.
But actually, we are learning something more than textbooks. Yeah. We are going to.
What are you learning than textbooks, other than textbooks?
For example, actually for our student unions, we will organize some lectures focus on legal issues about some criminal offense that we may meet in some protesting issues, as well as we will learn about the influence of tear gas and other chemical weapons.
Is that worth learning, the influence of tear gas? How does that help your future career?
I don't think that for students we only focus on textbook or something like our future career. If we lose Hong Kong, then we have no future.
Are we losing Hong Kong?
Yeah, sure.
In what way?
If we continue to see that the police abuse their power, and then the governments really ignore the voices of people, then I cannot see how the teenagers' voices can be heard, and how the policies and also different kinds of strategies by governments with favor teenagers as well as all the Hong Kong people and bring benefit to the society. So I would say actually what we are doing is that we think as a students we have our responsibility to defend the justice as well as to protect our city, not just focus on like academic study. Yeah.
You know, Eve, aside from the university students, secondary school students are also joining the class boycott. Some of them are 12, they're preteens, 12, 13 years old. Is that a good thing for them? I mean, they're so young, they may not even understand what all this is about, right?
Yeah, so actually, we, the student unions of higher institutions, as well as different groups of students' organizations, are trying to spread the message of why we are doing the class boycott campaign, why we are initiating that, and then hope that they would understand. But for sure that I think like in previous class boycott experience, for example, in 2014, 2012, we can still see many secondary school students to initiate different activities relating to what's happening in the society. And I don't think they are too young, or I don't think they know nothing about what they are doing. Yeah.
Okay, now let's have a look at something. The students had some kind of a rally some couple of weeks ago. Let's have a look.
中國嘅崛起對於全球人權同埋民主嘅影響。
Now, that was a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure you were there.
Yeah.
It's a big protest by university students in Central. This movement, leaderless movement, most of the people involved in these protests, some of them are violent protests, are young people. Over 700 of them have been arrested. Many of them are young people, university students like yourself. Why are you not afraid? I mean, what motivates you to go there and fight with the police? I don't know whether you've done that, but for so many people, they got arrested and they're going to have to go to jail. And you're not afraid. Why is that?
I would say that young people surely afraid of police or all this kind of oppression. But what we have to think about is why they are still going strike on the streets and then doing all those things despite of the fact that they are afraid of all this kind of...
Are you afraid when you go to these protests?
Because we have no choice, I would say. And
when you see a policeman pointing a gun at you, firing tear gas at you, a beanbag round at you, are you afraid?
Of course, and then
why do you
adults will
go?
be afraid as well. But actually, we will think that we have no choice. If we would like to protect our city, if we would like to protect our next generation with a better Hong Kong, then we have to do it.
Okay, now Eve, I'm going to pin you down on this. You say you have to protect Hong Kong for the next generation. You are the next generation. I mean, you're 20 years old.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about people that come after you, what are you protecting? I mean, what is wrong that you think Hong Kong is now that you need to protect them?
Some of the core values, for example, like freedom of speech, for example, our personal safety, for example, rule of law, all of this are undermining, destroying.
But you and I are sitting here and we're talking freely. That's free speech.
But I would say like there are many of the rights terror in our city. For example, when we say when we support the protesters, then we may face some risk in our career, and all of this kind of things are actually happening in Hong Kong. Yeah. So if we do not come out and then voice our opinion, then it may be 10 years later or maybe faster, like 5 years later, we cannot like speak here freely.
Do you really believe that, Eve?
Yeah.
That 5 years
sure.
down the road, 10 years down the road, you will lose the freedom of speech?
Yeah.
Why? What makes you believe that?
Because I can see that like previously we can see that some booksellers were kidnapped by
The booksellers in Causeway Bay, right?
Yeah, kidnapped it, and they went to the mainland China and then disappear for a period of time. And then when such kind of things have been happening in Hong Kong more and more frequently, and then for example, like in the incidents of like Simon Cheng,
the person
Yeah.
who worked for the British consulate in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
He was detained for 15 days in China.
Yeah, so I cannot. Is it foreseeable that our room for freedom of speech and also our freedom of assembly, etc., is under risk? Yeah.
Well, tell me this. You go to these protests. I don't know whether you've joined violent protests, but you do go to protests. I know that. What do your parents say? I mean, when you go and you say to your parents, I'm going to go join a protest, do they say, don't go, or put on your helmet and goggles to protect yourself? What did they tell you?
Actually, they really do not want me to go, but I think they understand the rationale of the protest.
Are they afraid? Are they worried about your safety when you go?
Of course, and they will keep calling me and then asking me where am I. Yeah.
And you take the calls and you tell them you're safe?
Actually, most of the time I cannot take the call. Yeah.
Why is that?
Because.
But if you don't take their calls, you worry even more.
I would have a suitable time, then I will call them back, but not
at the height of the protest, when things are getting out of hand, then you just cannot
I just
call
cannot
them.
handle it.
So they don't want you to go, but they understand why you're going.
But I know that many of my friends,
yes.
Also parents of some students, often worry about that, and then just prevent their students, their children from going to that kind of area and joining the protest.
They stop them from going?
Yeah.
But your parents have never stopped you from going?
Yeah.
They tried?
They tried, but they failed.
All right, okay. Quick break, see you soon, don't go away. Thanks for staying with us. Straight up with me is Yves Lui. Yves Lui, you're the external vice president of the Chinese University of Hong Kong. Now you're going to have a class boycott next week.
Yeah.
You said earlier that you have to fight for the next generation. That's why you're protesting. You feel that your free speech rights, other freedoms are being eroded, right?
Yeah.
So you have to come out and fight. But you're fighting against the Hong Kong government.
Yeah.
You're fighting against the central government. It's not a fight that I think you can win if you're fighting against the central government. Do you really feel it's worth it that even though you feel that some of your free speech rights are disappearing, on the whole, it is still one country, two systems? And China is respecting one country, two systems, and most of your freedoms are intact. So is it worth going to such lengths that we see protests and violence every week?
I would say, actually, we are not only looking at the effectiveness, whether it is worth it or not, but that's something we should do, I would say. We shoulder the responsibility to do, to protect what we have or protect the values that we believe.
How many students do you think will take part in this class boycott next week?
I think at least a few thousands, but it is only a very rough estimate number.
And you'll continue for 2 weeks and see what the chief executive says, right? Now, the chief executive wants to talk. She had a meeting last week with some people. She says, we want to have a dialogue platform. Anybody can come and talk to her. She's admitted she made a mistake with the extradition bill. She's suspended it. She doesn't want to say withdraw, but she's suspended it. And she has admitted that she has made a very, very bad decision on this that caused so much trouble that we are where we are today, right? Let's see what she has to say.
This is something that we want to do in a very sincere and humble manner. I and my principal officials are committed to listen to what the people have to tell us, and we want to reach out to the community as soon as possible.
She used the word humble. She's humble. She and her officials want to listen to what people want to say. Before she had this meeting, this dialogue with some community leaders, including university vice chancellors and so on, former government officials and so on, she approached your university among a few others, right? Your university was the first place, along with a couple of other universities, that she approached the first time ever and says, come, let's talk. You refused. Why?
Because the author is in a very closed-door manner, and then the government insists without any prerequisites to hold this kind of meeting, and then refuse to invite all of the student unions leaders, but instead pick
picked your Chinese University of Hong Kong and a couple of other, I think Baptist University.
UST.
Right. So, but you turned her down. She said, come talk. You say it was closed door, but then finally she said, well, let's open it. Let's do it openly. And no preconditions, let's talk. You still said no. Why?
Oh, actually, she insists to have a closed door manner. Yeah.
After you refused, she said, let's have an open door one as well, but you still refused.
Because
said,
we
said we got to go in there to have the 5 conditions met. Those are preconditions.
We have 2 prerequisites. One is to have an open meeting, and then another is to stop the prosecution of the protesters. Yeah.
But there are over 700 of them now. If you stop the prosecution, then you're breaking the rule of law. There is rule of law in Hong Kong, which you want to protect, right?
But actually, actually, many of the legal professionals have mentioned that according to the basic law and current statute, it is possible for the CE as well as the government to stop the prosecution manner and
grant an amnesty to everybody.
The law.
You mean an amnesty to everybody, right?
No, it is to stop the prosecution and to stop the investigation process.
Okay, so in other words, just say everybody, we will not charge you, and that's the end of the matter.
Yeah.
Is that really possible, Eve? Do you think if the government did that, wouldn't that be undermining our rule of law? Because some of them did commit pretty violent crimes.
But actually, I think that according to what the legal professionals and also professors said, it is possible for the government to do so. They have the power to do so. But actually, at the same time, if the government continue to prosecute the protesters, how can we start the dialogue with the government?
Okay, well, on that point, let's have a look at another clip. Eve, we're seeing this every weekend now.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm getting tired of looking at it. I'm sure a lot of people are as well. It doesn't do Hong Kong's image any good. You see this kind of violence. Now, you see people beating up the police beating up the people, people beating up other people, and finally you saw the police draw their guns.
Yeah.
And one of them actually opened fire. Now, when you say don't charge any of them, but some of those people actually were violent, how can you not charge them?
But actually, I would say they are forced to do so. They are not really...
Do you support that? You say they're forced to do so. Do you support that kind of violence?
I would not say I support any of the acts of the protesters, but I would say I understand why they are doing so. I understand the rationale behind. No one would like to be violent. No one is born to be violent, especially for the teenagers. They can just stay at home and then without risking their life, without risking their career.
Why don't you do that instead of going out there and facing a policeman holding a gun in your face? Would that scare you?
Yes, as I mentioned, all of the teenagers will be scared, but actually they are still doing so because they think they are something they worth to fight for, and then they are thinking these kind of values are really mean to that. They think that this kind of values are more important than their life.
But Eve, it started off with an extradition bill.
Yeah.
Caroline said the bill is dead. Whatever word she uses, she refuses to use the word withdraw for whatever reason. But as far as most people know, it's not going to come back again. But somehow it's evolved into something much bigger. You talk about fighting for your freedoms, fighting for the future, fighting for your way of life. How did all that come out from an extradition bill?
Because I think that this kind of this movement shows that the governments do not really listen to people, do not really listen to the voices of people, and then just ignore, turn a blind eye to all those acts and movements and protests, and then just use the police power to oppress the students as well as all the Hong Kong people.
Well, some people say, Eve, that you're fighting not for your freedoms, you're not fighting for a future generation, you're fighting for independence. That's what some people are saying. And foreign forces are helping people like you fight for the independence of Hong Kong. Are you fighting for independence or you're fighting for your freedoms?
I believe that there are no conflicts between the two. And then I believe that amongst all the protesters, there are certainly some of them are advocating Hong Kong independence.
That'll never happen, you know that.
While some protesters do not really agree with Hong Kong independence.
Do you agree with Hong Kong independence?
I think it is one of the way for us to have a better Hong Kong.
But do you support one country, two systems?
I don't think under the rule of the Communist Party we have the true one country, two system to be practiced. Yeah.
So you feel that there is, in fact, what you're saying is that there's no hope. The current situation of one country, two systems, there's no hope.
That's why so many teenagers come out, because they cannot see any hope. They cannot find any way out other than going to the streets and then to express their voice.
But that is distressing to hear, because most of the guests, young people I've had here before, never said that they supported a separation or independence. They supported one country, two systems, but they want to preserve the freedoms that Hong Kong has, right? And they didn't say they wanted anything more than that, but now you're saying that they want something more than that?
I would say some of the protesters believe that Hong Kong independence is a way out, yeah, but not all the protesters.
But it's not a way out, because it's not going to happen. You know that.
And then I would say, if you would like to pursue the democracy in Hong Kong under the system of under the one country, two system in the current situation, I cannot see how we can really get our freedom safeguard under this kind of situation.
All right. Okay. Well, let's hope things do get better rather than getting worse. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Good evening.